Hey folks, it's Nate coming at you. It's the middle of the day today on Tuesday, on June 20th. So coming to you today with another Saber review update. So this is a recent acquisition that I purchased. This was purchased off the secondary market on Facebook. Picked this up from a guy named Brian Hardy. I think it was on Lightsaber Market. And this was originally, when he advertised it for sale, he advertised a pair of these, one CFX installed, one Proffie installed, and the T-grips were not on here. Originally, he had a different pommel. He originally had this pommel on it, along with the brown leather wrap on the grip, and it was sort of advertised as like a Vader / SK mashup. And I liked that design. And that was actually what prompted me to get it originally. And then Brian was kind enough to include the T-grips and then the two copies of the MPP pommel. So there's two different versions of this pommel cap that he included, as well as the T-grips along with the purchase. This is a one-button Proffie, and this is original. It's an older 7/8 blade emitter, and I can't tell. I think this is a stock EchoWorks pixel setup. Yeah, I think it's stock. I forget how you say it. But yeah, I've wanted sort of a nice weathered, beat up looking MPP for a while. And this seems sort of like a nice opportunity to pick one up. One downside is that he originally advertised this as a Proffie 3.9. It was not. It was a Proffie 2.2. I can live with that. That's okay. This does have a crystal chamber with both a kill switch and a recharge port.
Liar! Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
And the clash sensitivity just goes off the rails whenever I have the pommel off, or the grip off. And then this is nice. I like that. It's sort of a two-piece crystal chamber here, and then this is where the board is, and this piece comes off fairly easily. So it's actually pretty easy to access the board, which I've already done. In fact, the first day I got this, I had a Vader config already set up for this thing, and I had what I thought was going to be a proper config for it, based on 3.9 OS 7 beta combination. So I had a config all set up for, crystal chamber. But then when this came, I didn't realize that this was a dual wired crystal chamber. It was has two data wires, not one. So I had to tinker around with that. But then I couldn't find the original config didn't come with this. So I got back in touch with the guy who built it, which I think was Juan Ramirez. I think some of you may know. He's sort of he's a regular in the Saber community. He's a nice guy. Good installer. And he couldn't give me the config. He didn't have it, but he was able to help me out with the wiring config for the crystal chamber, and so he was able to give me that little blade section down at the bottom that was correct for how this crystal chamber was wired, which was really all I needed. So I plugged that in, and recompiled everything, and now we're off to the races.
You underestimate my power.
So not as many false clashes when the grip's back on. And then I don't have to pull the full grip off to turn the saber off. You can just take the pommel cap off, turn it off right there, and then recharge it when you need to. So that's nice. So some pros and cons of this particular thing. So for those of you out there looking for MPP hilts, getting them installed, some of the pros and cons I will say on this one, after tinkering with it literally nonstop for the last 3 days, and this is coming from somebody who has been admiring these hilt styles from afar for a long time. I did own one for a brief period of time and then let it go because I wasn't too into that version that I had. It was a little too thick for me. This version I like much better. It's a nicer, a slightly slimmer feel. So anyway, pros and cons. I like a one button on this one. I like having a one button on this particular hilt. The reason being is that control boxes I'm not a huge fan of aesthetically, although if I'm getting a replica / Canon saber, I completely accept the existence of a control box, and it looks completely appropriate for what I'm after. But that being said, with the control box being there, it makes doing dual switching, like aux and power, a little bit convoluted for me. So having all of the other, decorations on a hilt like this, and having it look, accurate, is far more preferable to me than having a 2-button setup. So I like being able to have just the one button, because this saber is predominantly going to be for things like cosplay and shelf display and the occasional pull off the shelf and play around with it. This is not going to be a saber that you see me dueling with or making a bunch of demo videos with, stuff like that. Much more likely to see me take it out like for Halloween, right? So in this case, I would say the one button is actually a pro. Other pros is that on this particular one, I like the size of the T-grips. The T-grips aren't too tall, so they don't make gripping the saber too difficult. Also, another pro is I like the setup here of having the kill switch right here in back, where I just have to lift the pommel cap to turn the saber on and off, as opposed to having to unthread the grip every single time. I think that's great. Cons. I don't like recharge ports on this. And I shouldn't say I don't like them. I don't prefer them. I think don't like is too strong of a word. I don't mind them a whole lot. But what that also indicates to me is that in a couple of years' time, depending on how much use this saber gets, this is all going to have to get redone just to get to replacing the battery. If the battery ever dies, then I have to bring this back to a smith, who will then, have to pull this out and get in here just to replace the battery, and that's a lot of work. I that's one of the reasons why I prefer replaceable batteries over recharge ports, especially for builds that are a little bit more complex like this, like with crystal chambers. I much prefer a removable battery if possible, simply because that means less maintenance work down the road when those batteries actually die out. Now, the half-life on these 18650 cells is pretty long, but it ain't forever. I've already had to replace 2 in other sabers that I own, that I've had maybe 3 years. So it's not, they don't last as long as I think some people might think. So that's one con. On these types of builds, I much prefer a removable battery over a recharge port. Other con, I'm not a big fan of 7/8 blades. I like 1-inch blades. Basically a 7/8 blade basically means that this will never get used for dueling, which again is fine. But I'm so used to 1-inch blades that the 7/8 blade, I notice how much thinner it is when I'm swinging it around, and it just sort of looks awkward to me. That's just a me thing. I don't think that's a universal. But that's really it. You know, I like MPPs and DV3 designs. I think they're beautiful. I think one of the other reasons why I haven't been so quick to get one and have sort of just been waiting around for the right impulse buy to come along is that they're not really limited on the market. Like anytime you want to get a good DV3 or DV6 or MPP, you can find one. They're everywhere. So even though they're sort of a highly prized saber type, there are also quite a few of them out there on the market and available, both empty or installed, weathered or new, you know, with all types of different versions out there. And there's even places you can go to get all of the different parts, you know, to assemble it to a certain type of configuration. So I think their availability is sort of what's kept me from going, oh, I really got to get a hold of one, because I was never worried about them sort of leaving the market, right? So, but anyway, I'm really happy to have this to my collection now. As I was mentioning before, my full Vader config is on here now, so it's got all of my Vader sound fonts that I own, going from episode 3 up through the Kenobi series, thing up through Rogue One, and then episode 4, 5, 6, and then there's a couple of other Vader fonts here from Jedi Fallen Order, Survivor 1, and then Survivor 2. Some of the most recent ones that Kyberphonic, Blue Mamba, and K-Sith collab released. So I think all in all, there's about 18 different Vader fonts on here, and still one of my favorites on here. Still one of my favorites is Jay DeLorean's Vader versus Ewok. That font is absolutely fantastic. And a few other notables on here that I like. BK Saber Sounds' Dark Rogue Leader version 3. And then also Kyberphonic's Father, A New Hope version 2. The version 2 series that he released. The New Hope version is my favorite of the 4 that he redid. Let's see, any other ones? I think those are like probably my top 3 favorites. But the most recent one that they released, I think it's Archives Assault. That one's really cool. So if y'all haven't checked out that new Survivor 2 sound font bundle, definitely check it out. And yeah, so as always, thanks for watching, y'all. May the Force be with you. I'll see you on the next one.